second here. All right, we are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is part 2 of the People's Penicillin podcast with our amazing guest, Eric Brown, financial advisor, farmer, life coach, mentor, group leader, all sorts of things. Today, I'm really excited to continue the conversation. Last night was pretty good. It felt like we were just doing what we normally do, hanging out, chatting,
Very true.
solving all the world's problems, So we're bright-eyed, we're bushy-tailed this morning. How are you feeling this morning, brother?
Dude, I feel great. I was definitely, I think we got on a roll last night, and honestly, I hope that today we may get a little more practical, a little more technical, and actually probably make some people some money today. But I think it was important to have some philosophical conversations about where the tips and tricks and strategies come from. I do believe that we solved that and laid some groundwork so people kind of understand that we're not just pulling this shit out of our ass. It's actually, a belief system, something that's been learned through trial and error. I've always said I've, didn't learn anything unless somebody hit me in the head with a 2x4. That's how us stubborn, hard-headed farmers are. But yeah, let's rock and roll. Let's get after it.
Awesome. Well, so one of the things they talk about in mastery is 10,000 hours. So, me, I'm a musician. I've clocked my 10,000 hours in, and so many things in my life. But the more I understand what like basic maintenance is for finance, the more I realize like I haven't even really begun that journey of clocking in my 10,000 hours of understanding how to manage my money, what's coming in, how do I grow it, how do I plan for the future. And I feel okay and humble enough to say that because I know that I'm not alone. I know there are millions and millions of Americans right now who are struggling to wrap their heads around what their money situation is like. And so super grateful to have you here. As we talked about last night, you legally as a fiduciary, you cannot give like financial advice publicly. So I guess today what I maybe want to start with are like some of those like nuts and bolts things. Like,
Yeah.
what do you believe people aren't doing, or what do you see more often than not that people aren't doing that is like basic health, like changing the oil of your car? Like, what are
Right.
people not doing financially in that regard?
Well, the one thing we have to look at too, as you talk about the 10,000 hours, is that's another system that works in reverse. So if you do it wrong for 10,000 hours, you're going to suck really well, at the end of the 10,000 hours. And I think that's where a lot of us, and I'm going to include me in there because I mean, even to this day, I still do dumb shit once in a while. I mean, things that I know are wrong at the time of doing them. It's just, thank God today I'm blessed that those decisions don't ruin me. Where there was a day that, a $75 spent the wrong way, might have meant I couldn't go pick my child up from the hospital after my wife gave birth. That's how tight we were back in the day. A
There's a
few
lot of
things
people
that
there.
are, oh yeah, for sure. And a few things that I think will keep it simple is things that I know I see every day that correlate perfectly with somebody that's struggle busing for money. Is everybody thinks their problems will be solved by making more. And there is something to that. I'm not going to lie that more money does provide more opportunity. The problem is that everybody that gets a pay raise, changes a job, and gets an increase somehow still magically ends up with the same net amount in the checkbook at the end of the month. Is lifestyles grow to the amount of cash there is. And then unfortunately, due to programming and mind manipulation and marketing and branding and all that stuff, we now, our lifestyles not only consume our income, but they also consume debt, things that we're promising to pay in the future. So I always ask this one common sense question is that if you can't afford it today, how can you afford to make the payment on it tomorrow? I mean, there's a reason why you can't afford it, meaning there's not enough net money in my checkbook at the time of purchase. But yet you're assuming that there's going to be enough net money in the checkbook to make a monthly payment with interest tacked on top of it. So, number one, I think if there's something simple, and it's so hard to do, And I know there's a lot of mid to lower class, individuals that are truly struggle busing. I'm not throwing anybody under. It's mad respect for working hard and taking care of your family and taking care of your bills. I'm saying this as an advocate, not as somebody that's looking down. Is that I understand it's hard to live within your means when your means aren't enough to live. But I still to this day am just mesmerized and just I just blown away by when I go sit down with somebody that wants financial counseling and I walk in and see the $2,500 big screen. I see the $1,500 smartphone. I see the complete new furniture suite that's been purchased at Rent-A-Center. So we couldn't afford the $1,000 sofa. So now we're going to pay $3,000 for a $500 sofa. There's all these things that even though your means and your income earning potential as of today isn't what you need it to be, I contend that all of us, no matter the size of the budget, waste a shit ton of money on stuff that we truly don't need. I need to have a cell phone. I need to have a so what if somebody's going to call me about a job? What's somebody going to, what if my kids need to be picked up after practice? Does it need to be $1,500 cell phone because you need to post selfies on Facebook or because the camera's better on this one?
Hmm.
We truly have to be honest about appraising our current situation where we're at. Like you talked about humility when we first, when we were talking ahead of time, that humility and admission to personal responsibility is the foundation or the building block to anything that we want to grow at or become better at. And admitting that, even if our whole budget is $2,000 a month, we probably could find $150 of that we're wasting somewhere.
Somewhere you're
That could
bleeding it
be,
out somewhere. Yeah.
yeah. Because anybody that I sit down and talk to that has that, I'm only have a $2,000 a month budget, has 5 grand on credit cards that they're paying 22% interest on.
Or
That,
that, have you seen that ad where people are like, are you paying prescriptions that you've forgotten about? Like you can download this app that's going to scan your bank account
yep,
and find like, oh, I did sign up for, AMC movies through Amazon Prime once, and they've been charging me $9.99 a month for 7 months,
yep.
and I didn't notice it.
That's a
And
true story too.
but that's there's an
Yeah,
app for it now. There's
yeah.
an app that will find the things you subscribe to monthly, and that I think that goes to something that you're speaking of is not only do you have to understand how to live within your means, you have to know what your means are. Like you
Oh
have to
yeah,
know like how much money is coming in and leaving your bank account every month, and like know that exact number every single month. Hell, every
preach.
week, apparently, if you can. And I think that goes, and I've been victim to it. I've had to find charges that I didn't sign up for that were happening for 4 months before I caught it. And I'm like, wait, what the hell is this $19.99 charge
Yep,
from some company I don't recognize? What the hell is this? And then you got to search the company, find it, find the number, and they say, oh, well, this was a promotional thing. You signed up for this. And then,
yep.
after the 7-day period, we started charging you. And so I think it really goes to how amazingly disconnected we are from our money. And to a guy like you,
That's accurate
you've clocked in way beyond your 10,000 hours. You've had the
for
highs
sure.
and the lows, the big sales, big checks, and the periods of, oh, fuck, bankruptcies or what have you.
Yeah,
And so you've clocked in the failures and successes. So you're very much connected to your money. So when I listen to you talk about, it could be your portfolio or what you're thinking or what your projections are for the economy based on this president or that president. I can just tell that you have a command over your money, which is something that I grew up in a house where we were not connected to money.
right.
And so the things you're
That's
talking
typical.
about, those frivolous expenses and not
Yeah.
knowing where your money is, like that was the house I grew up in. It's no shade against mom and dad. I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus either, but at the end of the day, it was a lot of credit cards and it was a lot of like, we'll have it now, but pay for it later. And why do you like is it literally just downgrading? Because a lot of people get offended by this, generate because they'll talk about inflation, say like the gap between what we're paid and how much something costs is in undoubtedly different, and we can look at the numbers for that, right?
Mhm.
Like it's
Yeah,
definitely different for us younger folk than it was 30 years ago, just as far as like that difference between what you make and how much shit costs. um And so they feel like it's a bit like bootstrappy, like, oh, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and make something of yourself in this capitalist society. And they get offended. And I kind of see why. They do have some data and metrics to back it up. But also, I'm someone who understands the 10,000 hour rule. You
Mhm.
know what I'm saying? So it's not one way either way. It's like there's this like middle path here where it's like, sure, shit fucking is harder for people in this day and age because
Mhm.
there's just a lot of problems we could point to, corporate corruption and all these things. It is harder, but we're not going to press some magic button to change that. So in light of that, like there are some 10,000 hour rule stuff that we can apply to how we make money, earn money, grow money, save money. And it seems like what you're saying is it is the nuts and bolts of it is don't buy stupid shit that you don't actually need. Go for the humble, modest product if you do indeed need that product for a time, right?
Mhm.
And then what?
Everybody now is, again, we know it, we talk about it, and if you talk to anybody that's 75 years old now, all they talk, about is our generation and younger, is that it's instant gratification. I'm due it
Yeah.
now. I need it now. I
Mm-hmm.
deserve it now. One thing that I think will put things into perspective, because, and I've had clients do this, is when they say, no, I'm only paying my regular bills, and I can't, is I have them for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whatever time frame it takes to encompass most of their big expenses for the month, is write down every penny they spend for one. Do it for a month. Every penny. If you stop and you buy bubble gum for 50 cents, or you buy it, well, hell, they used to be 50 cents. It's probably $2 now. I don't know.
It used to be a
Um,
nickel. What are you talking
yeah,
about?
yeah. I just walk around with shitty breath, so I don't care. No, but no, seriously, if you write down, Tracy and I had, I mean, back in our OG broke stage, we literally wrote down every single cent we spent. $1 here, $2, and I'm telling you what, it is mind blowing, and it is habit changing. If all of a sudden I'm sitting here saying I don't get this and I really want this and I just can't get it, but then I see, holy shit, I'm choosing not to get what I want. I'm choosing not to get to where I want to be. Or let's say you keep track of it and you are 100% perfect with every cent of your dollar. Well, then what's the other half of the equation? It's revenue, it's income. I have to find out then how I can provide a greater value that earns a greater amount of revenue. Everything that we do, yesterday we talked about making money or growing money. Making money, I look at is, trading time for money. That's what we do if we have an hourly wage or we work for a job. So we're giving up an hour of our life, and then we decide if it's either worth $10 or $50 an hour, whatever that number is, depending on where you're at. We're
So that's like
trading that.
earning. We're like,
Yes,
yeah, trading
earning,
time to
sure.
earn money. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to go with growing money, or, again, I guess I misspoke, but yeah, growing money, that means I'm using assets I've created that
Mm,
are working in tandem with me while I'm out doing whatever it is I do as my avocation. This asset is still working for me. If I'm asleep in bed, it's still working for me. There's steps we have to go to get to that point. We don't graduate college and all of a sudden we have a portfolio that grows for us. The degree doesn't provide that. Our
mm,
hard work, our sacrifice, our management, the difference that we make in our clients' lives, the problems we solve and change, the work we do to help our employer become more profitable. That's
mm,
how we create the portfolio. And then the most important part, most of the time, again, is not necessarily the amount of revenue, it's the amount of expense. And there's a difference too. We can talk about expenses and we can talk about liabilities. And we can, an expense is just something that's a consumable, like a toilet paper, or like
mm-hmm,
butter or margarine or milk. A liability could be a mortgage against a apartment building in which we're renting. An expense is something that's consumable. And if we're going to look at a liability, usually there's an asset attached to it, something
mm,
that's either generating enough income to pay for itself, or that we're using our resources that we're earning to help create the asset that in the future will pay us back money, and continue to grow.
See, that's
These are
something that
all these little nuances and difference in terminology that we've spent the 10,000 hours learning the wrong way, and we have to put in some time to unlearn, to unbe branded, to
It's so
unbe
true.
marketed to. We have to change that culture, and we're the only ones that are responsible to do it. Government is not responsible for that. Mommy and daddy is not responsible for that. I'm not responsible for that. You are. You are. Remember every time I said yesterday, it's my fault. Everything I've ever blown financially, personally, emotionally,
Yep.
physically has always been my fault. The greatest power secret I can give you today is to own that shit day one. Have that humility that you spoke of before we started, and put that ego to side and say, I got some shit to learn, because I do not want to do this forever. I will not do this forever. Yeah, I just don't accept that.
I think you're onto something really special here because I've not thought about it in this way. So if we say you're going to go to the gym and you want to get healthy, you want to either lose weight, gain weight, build muscle, whatever your goals are, and somebody tells you you're going to be sore tomorrow. There's almost this like we dread it, but we also kind of look forward to it because it's like that's how you know you've been doing it right. As long as you didn't tear something or hurt yourself, like that kind of soreness is proof that it's working, right?
Right.
Or if I'm teaching somebody how to play guitar and I say, hey, you have to press these metal strings down against a piece of wood pretty hard, and you're going to get these calluses, and your hands are kind of going to be sore as you're becoming more dexterous. There's going to be sacrifice here. There's going to be pain within the growth here. Everybody kind of understands that, and we embrace it for the most part. It does separate the winners and the losers, the people who keep
Preach.
going and
Yeah.
the people who don't, for sure. That barrier to entry. But it's weird to think about it in terms of finance. Like I guess I've never put it through that lens of like, if you want to put your 10,000 hours in, if you want to understand how to master your money, then there's going to be a painful process. And I think what
Right.
you're nailing here is that sacrifice where it's like, I may want this thing, I need a new quilt set for my bed or some shit, and it's $250. I can't afford it right now, but Amazon says for, 6 low payments of
Right.
39.99 or something every 2 weeks, I can have
Yep.
this right now. They'll ship it right now and you just pay us back later. That's so enticing for a lot of people that they forget that that's not putting in your 10,000 hours in the right direction. That's putting it in a pretty much self-destructive direction. Like you're going the opposite way of what you need to do. And so yeah, that just yeah, that helps. That helps a lot actually.
Another way to look at it is you just sit there and think simply. The average American in a 30-year career makes somewhere between 1.75 and 2.25 million in money. I want to be
Throughout
a
their
millionaire
lifetime?
in their lifetime. And I'm just saying their 30-year career. So they're making somewhere between $50,000 and $75,000. Like right now, the median income in the United States is $77,000 right now, which is hard to believe, but it is.
It used to be
Um,
good money.
oh yeah, yeah. The problem is $77,000 doesn't buy what it used to, does it either?
Mm.
So I mean, wage inflation has to follow product inflation, otherwise everybody's on welfare. Which I understand. The thing to look at though is, what if you could make a 1% difference this year? A 1% difference this year. That's $500 if you make 50 grand. What if I do a 2%, or I'm just doing an additional 1%? You see what I'm getting at? You start doing this over a period of time. The rate of return on
Mm.
little, small, incremental, not pain free, but manageable pain free
Mm.
ways, you can make a huge difference in a lifetime. And the thing is, every time that you go and you do the rent a center, or you ching the expense on the 24% credit card, you're almost guaranteeing that when you can't take care of yourself and you can't earn a living anymore, that you're going to get the public minimum at retirement. The
Mm.
public minimum, I challenge anybody to go check out any retirement community that's, the government's paying for, or to go check out any nursing home or, veterans home that the government's paying for, and see what minimum, and buying the shit you think you need today is almost ensuring where you're going to be tomorrow. And I would assume you wouldn't want that. But it takes the little teeny changes today, constant and never ending improvement. Japanese call that Kaizen. Tony Robbins did a whole book about it. That we don't need to change overnight. We don't have to rip the band aid off if that's not in our comfort zone. But we do every single day need to be just a little bit better than the day before. And if we
Yep.
do that over a period of time, eventually those goals won't look impossible. The dreams won't look impossible. You'll start to see them in the horizon. And then you're going to be willing to make more and more changes at a greater and greater pace. The
Yep.
whole key is we have to build momentum of doing the right things the right way for a long enough time. Life works that way. It's not guaranteed 100%. Life still happens to most people or to a lot of people. But if you want to tip the scale of life in your favor, do the right things the right way for a long period of time. And generally speaking, the things that you want, desire, I don't care if it's just happiness. I don't care if it's physical fit. I don't care if it's monetary. That's how you get there.
Yep.
There's not a self-help quickie book. There's not a one step and it's done. You can't go send 1999 to some Asian dude on TV to become a real estate investor. It's not how it works. You have to put in the work. You have to get your hands dirty. There are work clothes involved.
Yeah, right. And I think a lot of us want that cheap and easy instant gratification. And I've seen that again, even in my time as a guitar instructor, music instructor. It was very easy. It would become very easily like apparent very quickly as to who is
Mhm.
going to make it through that initial period of suck, and
Yep.
get to the other side of like real results with their musical playing, and the ones who are just like, oh yeah, that's not it's not for me. But the troubling part is with finance, like this is the very like life force that's
Mhm.
going to carry you through the decades and provide
Yep.
for you and your family. And so it's like, if we don't nail this one, it seems kind of like a big deal. So I grew up in a house. Let me back up. Hanging out with you and the business mastermind crew, and when my time at the chamber, hanging around people who knew what it was like to make $1 million sales. It was really crazy to me because you guys were using a language I had never heard. See, in my tax bracket, which I'm sure you remember, it's like putting money in a savings account was the golden standard of what you
Right.
could be doing for financial health. I'm going to take a little extra money. I'm going to
Mhm.
put it into this other account where I'm not going to touch it. And I
Right.
think there's probably merit to that, but the more I listen to you and guys like Tony Robbins or Ray Dalio, all of a sudden it's like, no, 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 no. Like, you want to be growing your money. You want the money that you have to be working for you. And so to get somebody to the point where they can even consider buying an asset or learning what an asset is, a lot of people just need to get to that square one, where I'm not
Right.
drowning in debt and I'm not worried like, oh shit, do I have enough paycheck left to get to the next one?
Right.
And I think it really does start, like you're saying, the Kaizen, where it's just one simple little adjustment at a time.
Yep.
Because again, if we jump in, and I say this about self confidence all the time, it's small, manageable goals. So if it's drinking more water every day, drink a little more fucking water every day, and like just
Right.
keep that little promise. Because the more you do it, then you can graduate to the medium level promises. And then you do a few of those. And then before you know it, you get to the big ones like, quitting smoking or totally changing your diet, staying true to a fitness program, committing to a financial plan, all those things. So it to me seems, know how much is coming in, how much is going out. But then maybe can we talk a little bit about like what does it look like for someone who's saving for retirement? I know you can't give specific advice, but maybe like as someone says, okay, my bills are paid and I do have money that I can now do something with, if they feel like a savings account is the smartest idea they have, like what would you say to that person? Like what's the next step for somebody who thinks I have some extra money for a savings account, but that's the best idea I have for what to do with this quote unquote like extra money?
Right. Well, first I'll depress everybody and then we'll go back and we'll figure out how to get around it. Today we're in an interesting time that we used to have a guaranteed payout rate that everybody thought was the right thing, which would be, you could take out 3.5%, 4% of your investments, and that would be enough to last your entire retirement, whatever. But now we're in a situation with inflation and whatnot. Let's just say you have $1 million saved for retirement. Right now, if we don't want to touch principal and we only want to live off the earnings, that only equates to about $45,000 to $55,000 a year. So again, for a lot of people, maybe that seems like a pay raise.
Mm.
But in the world we live in today, what does $50,000 get you? I mean, right now, we just spoke 10 minutes ago. We said that the median income in the United States of America is about 77,000. So if you can have the discipline and the fortitude to get $1 million saved, you're going to be 30% less than the median income today in the United States of America. And
Wow.
then we have to fast forward, let's say we're one of you youngins, we're 39, 40 years old, and we got 25 years to go from now. What's cost of living going to be then? What does a car cost? What does a house cost? Or hell, are we even going to be allowed to own a home in the future?
Mhm.
We unwrap and go into Pandora's box here of bullshit, right? So
That's
I try
crazy.
not to look at that picture, because to me, that's the opposite of Kaizen. That's the opposite of dealing with the elephant one bite at a time. That's just a reality that hopefully people decide that, hey, the biggest asset I have is time. So if I'm a 25-year-old and I'm listening to this and I haven't saved one freaking cent yet, and I've got, a car loan, 2 credit cards and a student loan, I got work to do, to get shit done. So here's a couple things that I think people should look at for sure if they want to turn the table and they want to get the whole cart, instead of going down the hill, going back up the hill again, is a couple things. One is you can't afford to pay interest on credit card debt. You just can't. There's this term, and I won't get into it today because I don't have a fancy illustration I can throw up onto the screen right now, is we've all heard of accrued interest, and we all heard how that's the seventh wonder of the world. Thomas Edison said it was one, or Benjamin Franklin said that was one of the craziest things that he could never get his head wrapped around, is how simple it was to invest and have your investments accrue over a long period of time. Well, here's the cool thing: as big of an asset it is for you, when you have a debt, that is equally as powerful in the reverse.
Mm.
So you're making the credit card company wealthier and wealthier as that 24%, 18% accrues over time for them.
Mm.
So you can never outgrow. It's hard to out earn. It's hard to ever take that first step to a goal if you're fighting a natural law that has been proven to be one of the most powerful forces that exist on planet Earth. So first thing you have to do, the most important thing before you invest a single dollar, is you have to get rid of those inside out equations that you're participating in. And I don't care what it takes, selling something, getting a side hustle, working an extra job, cutting other expenses, and throwing as much money every single month as you can, you will not be able to take your first step towards your goal financially until that is out of the way. I'm just being straight, just being honest, because guess what? I was there back when I was 24, back when I was 25.
So you're
It
saying
took
it's like
us 5
interest.
years, 5 years, 5 freaking years to dig out from the car loans and credit cards that we racked up. When, remember, I told you yesterday in part one that Tracy and I got fired, she got laid off. We still had car payments. We still had to live our lifestyle and go out to eat and stuff and buy groceries and all that type of thing. And it took us 5, 6 years to get out of that scenario. We didn't take our first step towards getting to where we are today until that was gone.
It
So I don't
seems
want
like
to
you're
depress
saying
anybody. I don't
so
want to tell you
interest
what's that?
is like interest is could be viewed as like forward momentum or
Boat
reverse.
anchor. Boat
Yeah, like
anchor.
an anchor. Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense. So the idea of assets, and this is you're talking directly to me now because you we're
Mhm.
friends here, and you know how stupid I am when it comes to finance.
Come on.
I know a great and many things about many things,
Mhm.
but finance is just one that has made my brain bleed. So you really simplified it in a way that was important for me. So interest is either going to work for you or against you. And if you're using it in debt, it's working against you. And
100%.
its power is thusly working against you. So utilizing the power of interest as an asset, what does that look like? Like on a fundamental, you're not giving me a financial advice, but like what
Right.
categories of things, like what types of things am I doing that count
Well,
as an asset? I
Well,
still, it's still foggy
everybody
to
wants
me.
to talk about real estate. So let's just use a simple example because my head hurts this morning. So I want to be a little bit general. Don't have to do a lot of heavy math. So let's say we own and
Thank God.
we worked really hard. We bought a $100,000 apartment complex. $100,000, and every year, with that we make about 18,000. Let's make it 20,000 again, so I don't have to do a ton of math. $20,000 of rents come in. That's 20% rate of return on our $100,000 that we have invested.
Mm,
So we also learned a couple lessons if we want to dig into the quickie nuance of past examples. We talked about we needed, if we had $1 million in retirement, and again, when we say in retirement, we're thinking mutual funds, 401ks, investment accounts, savings accounts, CDs, that type of stuff. We said we could only figure somewhere between 45 and 55,000. So that's 4.5 to 5.5% interest. Well, I have this apartment building that I've paid off because I worked hard, side hustled. My tenants helped, gave me rent. I used the rent to pay off the payment. Now I'm going to retire, and I've got this $100,000 building paying me $18,000 to $20,000 a year in rents. That's 18 to 20%, and I still have the apartment building yet. So there's just a little blink into rate of return, interest, that we can just make a little just pose of between each other of what like a cash investment in today's society looks like, what a potential real estate investment looks like in today's society. Are there all sorts of different things in between? Yes. Can you have all real estate and no investments? No. Can you have all investments and no other assets? No, you shouldn't if you want to be set up perfectly. Diversification, like Mama always said, don't put all your eggs in one basket, still matters because there's going to be times. Remember during COVID where they said that tenants didn't have to pay rent? Well, did a big huge real estate portfolio look super freaking awesome when when there's no rent coming in?
mm.
But guess what? The interest was still being paid, or the dividends were still being paid on the other investments. Proof positive that there is no perfect investment, that it takes having exposure in numerous different asset classes, numerous different kinds of investments is probably for most people the safest way to invest. But again, everybody should always invest to their level of sophistication. Meaning, if you don't understand everything about it, you're not a student of the game, you haven't put your time in, or you don't have a trusted advisor or a trusted team to help guide you through it, you should not put your money in it. And I
Mm.
say the same thing. People should do that with credit cards. They truly do not understand typically the impact. They always say that, well, I'll put the $200 on there today and shit, I'll pay it off before the end of the month. That happens like 10% of the time. They
Mhm.
really don't forward think or do the math out or understand how that system works. And if they pay only the minimum payment, how long it's going to take to pay it off. If they don't have the money today to buy it, that they probably shouldn't buy it anyways. Having an understanding, as we're trying to do a little bit, just to kind of like glean over the top of everything so people know where they want to spend time learning in more detail, is that you have to become a student. You have to put your 10,000 hours in. And if you don't want to put the 10,000 in, then you better find a financial advisor, a tax preparer, CPA, an attorney, people that you trust that'll help guide you. You use as a mentor group, as a board of directors, as whatever you want to call it, to help guide your investments and help guide your exposure, help guide and to help you decide how much risk you can assume. It's not just as simple as, hey, I'm going to hop on TD Ameritrade and throw some money into Meta today. Because that's what my guy, the plumber there at work, said that he's buying Meta and he's made a ton of money with it. That's how most people start investing. And that's why most people stop investing is they started it totally on the wrong way. And then after they lose a little bit of money, or lose all their money, or it doesn't grow, they're like, well, this is a rip off. I'm not doing that anymore. And
Right.
again, it all comes back to being a student of the game. You go talk to Tiger Woods, and I've never listened or watched a golfer, maybe the only other one is Jack Nicklaus, that can give you historical details of great golfers that played the same hole he played. And for 4 rounds during a tournament over a weekend, he could tell you all 4 shots on that hole each time they played the hole, and where they ended up, how they got out of trouble, how long the putt was, which side of the green they decided to land the ball on, so to make sure they had the most favorable position to putt from. I
Mm.
mean, this dude is not only good at what he does, or was good at what he does, there's a reason. He understood exactly how the successful people before him did it. And instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, he tried to steal and rob and emulate the things that these great golfers did before him, to shorten the time frame so that when he's 8 years old, he's already kicking adults' ass at golf.
Mm.
He had mentorship, all the things that we're talking about, he did in a sports analogy. We went all the
It's
way around the block on that one, dude. Did I even answer your question?
yeah, yeah. No, it in either way, it keeps coming back to this thing of human beings are capable of great things, but there's just not a whole lot of us trying to achieve greatness. It seems like a lot
Right.
of people are just trying to get by and enjoy the things that they enjoy, which is also fine. And I would never shame anybody for that. But this idea keeps coming back around that if you want to be good at something, it's not by chance.
Mm,
It's the people who were good at these things, they really put in the effort. And for me, money was always this, it felt like a lottery ticket where I was like, well, they must just be, lucky, or it felt like somebody who's naturally gifted. I come from a long line of musicians. And so there's something to our
mhm,
ability to hear, see, and perform music, right? And that's fine. And there might be a leg up in some categories of human achievement. But with this money thing, the whole system is made up. So there's no way that somebody's like more naturally inclined to be good with money unless they were born with it. And like you said in
mhm.
part one last night, most of the trust fund babies lose all the fucking money anyway,
Sure.
right? It's
Sure.
like you said with farmers. It's like the farmer, first generation farmer starts the farm. The second generation will grow it, and the third one is like where it all collapses and they
Yep.
lose the whole damn thing. And so, really, what we're seeing is that the people who want to understand money, they become a student of that particular game.
Amen.
And so maybe somebody doesn't want to grow to the fact that of like 8, 9 figures, have a portfolio that's gonna carry them and their kids through life. But it's like some of those basic things, like how do we combat wage loss versus the value of the dollar plummeting? Because there's just no way around it. Like everybody knows the value of the dollar is plummeting, whether they want to talk about it in mainstream or not, or frame it in the correct way. We're
Mm,
printing ourselves into obsolescence. Like there's just no world where we keep living like this and the US dollar still reigns supreme. And in my eyes, that's at least how it feels to me as I consume this media and learn about it. So what do people do to combat that? Let's say somebody has a college degree, they don't know how to, or they're not even in an opportunity to use it, right? Most people don't. And so with this economy, with the jobs that are available, how do we fight what's coming? How do we safeguard ourselves and our families for what's about to happen? Like if you had to start over right now and not in the 90s when things were
mhm.
relatively better, what would you start to do if you had to start over right now in this economy?
100% understand the question, but I want to make sure we get the nomenclature right. Because if we're talking to people that are going to be listening to this that don't have a thorough understanding of macroeconomics and the terminology, you made the statement that we all know the dollar is getting weaker. That's a two-pronged situation. Yes, a single dollar doesn't buy as many goods and services as it did last year or since
Mm.
2020, if we want to really start throwing darts at shit. But anyways,
Hmm.
every individual dollar is not buying as much, but the dollar is still the strongest currency against all other world currencies out there, Hence the reason us farmers are complaining about our grain prices today, is when the dollar is worth so much more than the country that we want to sell to's currency, our crop is more expensive to them than, let's say, they buy soybeans from Brazil instead of buying soybeans from America. So when we
Mm.
say the dollar's weaker, we got to be very accurate on what we're saying there. Otherwise, we everybody goes off on a tangent, and then it's like, when you sit in a circle and you tell somebody in the ear that, hey, Tony's feet stink, and by the time it gets around to the end of it, it says, hey, Tony's got a big head. I mean, it
Mhm.
just, that's kind of what we're doing here. So yes,
The
each
telephone
dollar
game.
we have in our wallet is not buying as much product as it used to. That is 1000% correct. And you nailed why it is. It's 100% being caused. Inflation is almost always caused by um, a centralized government that is printing more money. Because why? We just talked about it personally. They're creating and buying things and sending money to places that they can't afford to do. So if they can't afford it today, how are they going to make the debt payment on all the stuff that they're doing that's a deficit type spending? So, what is right for us as an
Mm.
individual in our personal financial situation is exactly what's negative and happening with our government. So, why is it, Tony, that, the uneducated or the people that just watch the world from their job, they want a simple life, they're not going to dig into this shit, they see their government running their business and running their life that way. So, why shouldn't I? Okay. So again, programming, branding, marketing, it makes it sound like, if we want to go down the conspiracy theorist rabbit hole, that it's all being done on purpose. Okay. But I want to get back to the original question. I just wanted to make sure we had that terminology correct on that. So you asked me kind of a two-part question, and first part is, the summary would be that wage inflation isn't keeping up with cost of living inflation, and how do people combat that? And then the second part of the question was, if I had nothing today and I had to start over, what would I do? And I'm going to answer number two because I think it helps answer number one. Is, if
Okay.
I had to start over from scratch today, I would not be an employee for anybody. When I'm an employee for
Interesting.
anybody else, I am, if they're paying me $50 an hour, then odds are they're making 75. I want to make 75. I don't want to make 50. So I've decided all along, and this is an investment lesson too, that the first investment we always make before we do any other investing is invest in ourselves. We have the highest rate of return for every dollar invested in ourselves, whether it's more education, whether it's health and fitness, whether it's mentally, spiritually, in relationships, whatever. Invest the time and money there first, because it'll make you have more endurance. It'll have your brain clicking at 110% at all times. It'll help you have the energy to work a second job if you have to, or to start that side hustle that gets you from employed to unemployed.
Mm.
Invest those first dollars after we pay off that debt. Every dollar invested until we are a finely tuned machine is in ourselves first. Now, luckily, if we're creating a bunch of extra money and we've got our spending under control now after we paid our debt off, maybe we can invest in ourselves. That's very possible, but definitely want to start there. So, first of all, I would never be an employee. As of
Mm.
right now, we are living in a vacuum of hands-on private service. I mean, when's the last time you tried to get in to get your car fixed? When's the last time you tried to have HVAC come out and get your AC charged? There's just a total humongous demand for service, and there's just nobody out there to fill it. So I would put myself in a position where I could do the things where there's a big, humongous overload or backlog of people needing it done. And I would start there first. And then as soon as I could start where I was cash flowing, I would start looking to leverage my money into other assets that are going to work while I'm out working my hustle. I know that works. I did it. I've done it. I've helped a ton of other people, businesses and individuals alike, do it. That is the way to start. If I'm already employed and I'm starting kind of in the middle of life, And we just talked about it. We got to get our financial house in order first. And then we have to look at, how could I do what I'm doing today to create value and revenue for my employer? Is there a way that I could do that on my own? Is there a way that I could maximize revenue to me, control my schedule, be my own boss, take better care of my family, educate my kids on, hey, this is how we're going to break the cycle. Our family has been employees, which is nothing bad with that. I have plenty of employees. I mean, that's a good thing. But if you want something more, you want to be in total control, this is a way to do it. So that is 100% without getting into a bunch of details. If you want to get into the weeds, we can, but I would definitely not work for anybody. I would start working on myself, and I would be researching the market of where is there a backlog. Today, it would be in a trade of some kind. Luckily, I'm blessed growing up as a farmer. I can fix anything, run anything, build anything, operate any equipment. I feel very comfortable that there's really no hands-on thing that I couldn't do to get myself going. Even today, let's say I decide, hey, you know what? I like running backhoes. Well, you can't afford a, how am I supposed to, if I'm starting over from zero, how can I have a backhoe? Well, guess what? They have this cool thing where you can rent them. So I can
Mm.
go get backhoe jobs. And until I can afford it, I can rent a backhoe for a day, and they're going to charge me $200. I'm going to charge $800 for the job. I still make 600. I'd have made 150 working for somebody.
Yeah,
There's,
if that.
yeah, if that. There's always a way. There's always a way. Just because you haven't thought of it yet doesn't mean it doesn't exist. There is always a way. Now, we had a question pop up, but I wanted to go ahead and answer that real quick, and then we'll get back to it. Is
Oh yeah.
whoever the hell Cade Dizzle is, that's a great name. What are your thoughts on a cashless society? Um, I have one primary concern with it is if it's cashless, that means it's a bunch of zeros and ones in somebody's computer. There's nothing hard attached to it. It's not backed by anything, kind of like our dollars aren't backed to now, but at least I can touch my dollars and I can present my dollars physically to somebody. They can't take them from me unless they come at me with a gun. Then they could take them from me by force. But again, I still can see it, smell it, touch it. It's there and it's physical. Who controls the cashless society? We have this started in China right now, where we have social credit, and they can go ahead, and if you don't like the right news article or if you post something that's
Mm.
anti-government, they can all of a sudden shut off your Metro card. You go to get on the transit to go to your job, and they're like, sir, your card's shut off. All right, what? Yeah, you have an orange. When I put it in there, the big red stop sign comes up. You obviously did or said something that isn't approved by the government. So now you can't use your card. Oh, hey, you watched a movie last night that's not on the approved list. Guess what? You can't buy milk tomorrow at the grocery store. That stuff is happening already in societies around the world.
Do
Is
you
there
feel like
something?
blockchain could prevent that misuse? Like if it
Yes.
is truly
Yes.
decentralized,
Yes.
like
Yes.
that's how
Yes.
we go cashless, quote unquote, without
Mhm.
it turning into some like dystopian nightmare or something.
Yes. So, I mean, to answer that question quickly, I do not want a centralized digital currency, which
Mm.
is what the BRICS and what, the dumb administration we're dealing with now is all pushing. Is why would they want that? What is the incentive of government to have it? It's meant for ultimate control. And I know that's getting way off in the political crap, and we don't need to do that today. We're making too much good headway on financial stuff. But that's the only reason why I would be very cautious. And I personally, if I had a chance to vote, I would vote against it.
I I love this, and it's totally okay. We can totally parallel this with politics because at the end of the day, it's twofold. Because one, the politics is going to influence where this all goes, right? What the
Mhm.
quality of your life is. But also in parallel, is like there are things that I believe each one of us can be doing that can safeguard not only our lives, but our
Amen.
communities against no matter what they end up doing,
Amen.
just
Yep.
short of nuclear bombs and total utter catastrophe. I think there's a lot of things we can be doing that just kind of insulate ourselves from the madness of our leaders right now, honestly. And I think financial health is one of them. I love that you touched on working on yourself. So the books, the gym,
Hmm.
church, or if you're not a church
Yep.
person, find a spiritual retreat. Like save the money, go and do it. Be around other people who are looking for a reason to feel good about being alive. Like those things are so fundamental, because it strengthens us in a way that to where we can handle the 10,000 hours.
Right.
If you're weak, you're starving, you're undisciplined, and you're around the wrong type of people, and you start to embark on a journey of 10,000 hours in something, it's very likely you're not going to make it unless you
Right.
change a lot of those factors really quick, like your sleep schedule, your diet, your friends, the
Yep.
books you're reading, the TV you're watching, like that 10,000 hours. So whether we're talking about money or we're talking about any of the things that one might want to master, yeah. So I think this conversation is allowed to pretty much go anywhere. I like that it does, because money is intrinsically tied to everything that we do in our lives. And so let's dig a little deeper into that though. So if fiat currency, so the one thing that you are okay with right now, even about the fiat system, the silver lining to you is that like I at least can hold a dollar bill. Like I have evidence that this
Yep.
money, this time I've exchanged for monies, it can be represented by this physical, like tangible object that I can hold. Like
And
it
the
used to be
government can't
backed by gold.
shut it off. The government can't shut it off. That's even as important, if not more important, than being able to hold it.
Yeah,
Is
but
they
isn't
can't shut it
printing
off and make it so I can't buy food.
I mean, if we really want to go roundabout, isn't that what they're doing? Like by printing it into oblivion, essentially they are essentially turning off the dollar right now. Now, it might still on the global stage, it might still have the most purchasing power, but for the individual person, it seems
Mhm.
like that's exactly what's happening.
Right. There's no question that, and again, there's a statistic, and I hate quoting it because I always like to be able to document where I got it from. But I read this here, and it's only been a couple weeks ago, and it was either in Wall Street Journal, Investors Business Daily, or Barron's. I can't remember which financial paper I read it in, that said that if we go back to 2019, about 2/3 of our economy was driven by private enterprise, or by us, the people. And just in 4 short years, when we've went from 25 trillion to 36 to 37 trillion dollars of debt, now it's 2/3 driven by the government. So if we want to centralize, and the goal is ultimately to have total centralized control, how better to do it than to make it and grow every single year, where more and more and more people's housing, food, water, medical, all are coming from that centralized location. If I want to have total control as a centralized unit, I have to make it so privately I don't have the resources, or I can't afford those things on my own. And again, when we say the median income is $77,000, dude, I can't keep my lights on for 77,000 with all the shit we got going. So
Hmm.
it doesn't take a whole lot of inflation out here in the real world to go, okay, well, now I need 120 just to keep everything I've got going running. Oh,
Wait,
now
let's
next year
back
I need
up. So
150.
what does that mean? So 2/3 was private. So that's not only
That
small
means
business. That's going to be corporations.
all of
That's
us,
everything.
everybody but government. Everybody
Every
but government made up
how
2/3.
of
Now it's
what?
inversed.
2/3 of what?
The overall economy, the overall, like every dollar spent, everybody in commerce,
Exchanging
invested,
and the buying and
whatever.
selling of goods and
Yeah,
services,
yeah.
et cetera. So the
Whatever
government all of a
created,
sudden is now 2/3. How does
yeah,
that
it
happen? What
flopped.
does that look like?
It flopped.
What?
Well, we're $10 trillion. That's where $10 trillion. And you can, if
So
anybody
you're
doesn't,
saying the government outspent
yes,
all of us?
yes. So they created themselves to be a larger percentage or part of the economy. So now, instead
Hmm.
of, let's just use examples that everybody knows, let's just say Walmart and Amazon are working together. Well, there's now the government. So Walmart, instead of maybe buying from Amazon or doing business with Amazon, they may want to do business with the government. That's a guaranteed contract. That's tax dollars. They'll just print more and they'll pay me. Amazon, Jeff Bezos isn't there anymore. So then they may suck at what they're doing. So I'm going to move my relationship from buying and selling with Amazon to now I'm going to buy and sell with the government because that's guaranteed check. And that's a weird, very thin example, but it kind of shows you the process of where actual economic principle can work against you, just like rate of return, just like accrued interest, as just
Interesting.
like the 10,000 hours of learning wrong versus learning right. That commerce and supply and demand and all that stuff works bad against you, just like it can work for you. So if the
And it kind of goes
ultimate
to a,
goal is
no,
to
sorry.
take control from you, when I say you, I mean me, us as people, it is
Hmm.
to create a society in which the only choice for us to get the 3 or 4 necessities to life have to come via a government program in some way, shape, or form, or a government subsidized program in some way, shape, or form. It's working. It's working.
Hmm.
They didn't act, this isn't an accident. It didn't just all of a sudden this year happen. It started happening back with FDR when the Great New Deal or whatever the frick it was called came out. Where all of a sudden we created all those things. And again, I'm not saying he created them and started them with evil intent. Let's just say he started that, the Social Security and Medicaid and all that shit, out of the goodness of his heart, because there were people suffering and stuff. That's cool. The
Hmm.
problem is we created a society that creates dependency. It wasn't, these programs that, again, I'm going to use, they did it for the right reasons. I don't believe they did, but let's just say they did. They still just created a cycle of dependency. And this is what breaks my heart and makes me work so freaking hard if I can with kids, is because a lot of these kids now are almost fourth generation of food stamps, of, financial aid, of subsidized housing, so they have no clue. They've never been exposed to what the choices are. So
Hmm.
then we get to an election where the person that promises to keep doing what they've been doing for us, we keep voting for. We don't vote for the person that wants to help pull us up. And again, I'm using general terms here. I'm not picking parties or anything like that. I'm just saying that that's what, they keep voting for the people that are keeping them where they're at in their place. And that's why starting with these kids and educating financially, that's where I implore anybody listening that's not where they want to be. I don't care if you have 7, 8, 9-figure dreams or not. At least learn how to control your money to teach your kids. Teach them. How many
Yeah,
kids today
that's just it.
learn the
That's how they
freaking
get
money
away with
game?
it. That's
How
how
many
they get
kids
away
learn the
with
money
it.
game? How many?
None of them, which is why we keep electing leaders that are not benefiting the middle class or just the economy in general. That's why they're making stupid expenditure decisions and things that are going to drive us further into debt. And we keep allowing them to do so while at the same time engaging in like insider trading and all this
Mhm.
other wacky shit that they've been doing because we don't understand what it is that we're talking about. If somebody gets on MSNBC and says, well, this is the greatest the economy's ever been, and we have this document and this paper and this, but it's we don't know how to read the data,
Mhm.
and you can essentially lie with statistics,
Oh, for sure.
and it's really fascinating to me, and I think it is that lack of education, which is what I'm kind of hoping to do here. So maybe as we're entering into like the last 30 minutes or so here, can we maybe break down some of those interest, and this is Sesame Street level, and for the listeners, I am also at a Sesame Street level with finance, and I'm not even afraid to say it out loud. Like, I'm not embarrassed at all, and I don't think any of you should be either, because we're all in the same damn boat. And if we don't start clocking in our
Right.
10,000 hours now, we're never going to get there. So
Yep.
so for me, like, annuities, CDs, bonds. These are terms that I've heard before. I don't know what they are. I don't know how valuable they are. Is somebody like yourself who has a diverse portfolio, like, I don't even know what a certificate of deposit is or does. And could I Google this? Sure. But again, like, if I haven't even begun my 10,000 hours, they're going to be using language and things that still don't fully click. I might get the concept, but I don't understand how a CD like benefits me in real time, and how its value is determined, and all that stuff seems so foreign to me. Like I'm reading Egyptian hieroglyphs or something. So maybe can you walk us I'm serious, man. Like I know that if I make X amount of dollars and pay my bill and there's some left, that means I get a treat and some of it goes into a savings account.
Mhm.
That's the way that I was raised. And I think a lot of lower and middle class people have been raised like that, where it's like you got a
Right.
little extra, trimmings off of the paycheck. Well, that means it's pizza night on Friday and the rest goes into a savings account. And hopefully we have enough to last us until the next paycheck. So many people are living like that. And now we have Afterpay and Klarna and all these things on Amazon. So you throw in credit card debt and all this other shit on top of it, we're totally screwed. So maybe the building blocks of it is just understanding some of those basic concepts. So if somebody puts money in an interest bearing money market account, that's going to get a negligible amount of interest. That means it grows depending on the money market, right? But
Mhm.
what about a CD? What about annuities, bonds? Like, what about some of these classic hallmarks of saving money or growing money? What are their value in this day and age? What do they mean to you? And maybe how can we help people better understand why they're important?
Sure. I think before you look at product, you also have to kind of understand each product has it's not official, but to a financial advisor, we have to look at risk tolerance. Everybody has a different amount of risk they can take. So every investment has a different amount of risk that it provides for the rate of return that it gets. We also have time horizon. How long until I need this money? Some investments have surrender charges and fees if you have to take the money out, or there could be a tax consequence if I take it out before a certain age. So I have to understand first risk tolerance, time horizon, and then at the same time, it's going to come down to then the investment vehicle that I'm using. We have to make all three of those match, or an investment is not what we call in the industry suitable for the investor.
Hmm.
And if we're coming into this with the Sesame Street 101, as you said, financial literacy, there's just some investments that as an investor we're not ready for. We're not financially sophisticated enough, or we don't have the necessary financial knowledge to protect ourselves if something were to go awry or if something changes in our lifestyle.
Right.
We just don't have the ability to participate there. So if you take a look at, like, let's use like some bank products like a CD or a savings account, those are all going to be tied and wrapped around the federal funds lending rate, as far as what the Fed says money gets. So if we're going to use simplest terms, the bank's going to say, hey, you're going to bring in all these clients are going to bring in $100,000. They're going to deposit in our bank. We're going to pay them 1%, again, for easy math. And then we're going to lend it out for car loans at 12%. So the bank makes money on the spread between the 1% and the 12%. And then they have to back off their 17 middle managers and all of that they have in expenses, and they may or may not make a profit at the end. But when it comes
But that's
to risk,
fractional reserve banking, right?
yes,
In a
yes,
nutshell.
yeah. So when it comes to risk, there's this one term that they have in banking that they call the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. So every time you see a bank ad, you'll always see in their ads somewhere down in the corner, it'll say FDIC insured. Now after COVID and after 2008, that number's increased. I believe it's 250,000 now is the insurance level, meaning that if your bank were to go out of business and you had $200,000 in the bank, the government or the bank, organization that collects all this money, the insurance company, would pay your money back to you and make you whole. So in
Hmm.
essence, if that's available, banks are assumed, or bank products are assumed, to have literally zero risk. So if I'm an unsophisticated investor and I don't have a lot of money, I can't take or afford a lot of loss, and I may need my money to be liquid, in the next 3, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, probably bank products are going to be the place where you want to start. Not because they make a huge amount of money, it's that you need the traits in which it possesses. I need to have liquidity. If I need to have my money, I put it in today and I need it tomorrow, I don't want somebody to charge me to get it.
Hmm.
If I put my money in today and the economy crashes, I want to make sure that there's an insurance program that gives me my money back, because I can't afford to lose that. I can't afford to be part of that.
Hmm.
So for most investors, the reason why you say that's, a lot of what you have learned and, people in your situation have learned is because that's typically considered the safest place to start. And to be honest, that's probably the smartest place to start for most people. Once we get the debt taken care of, we probably should start building a little nest egg of money for when that shit happens that life throws at us that we're not expecting. Motor blows on the car. We're not going and recharging a $3,000 motor on a 24% credit card that we just fought for a year and a half to get paid off. It'd be better if we had 2-3 grand sitting in the bank. Again, we won't have any more emergency fund. We won't have any more rainy day fund, but at least we're not paying 24%. We didn't go backwards. We're still able to walk forwards.
Hmm.
So that just gives you a 1,000-foot view of, I guess, safety and where most people start. Then we
Yeah, because
start
that's
talking.
where
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that's where most people kind of get introduced to it. If they don't have a friend who's doing stocks and watching the
Mhm.
penny stocks or crypto stuff, like they're going to walk into a bank and somebody's going to be like, have you heard of this product? And that's usually their first introduction to interest bearing products from a bank. And I
Right.
remember my time working at a bank. I learned a little bit about them, but it still was hard for me to wrap my brain around, like, why is this valuable to somebody who isn't able to put in $50,000? Like, if I can come in and put in $50,000, this seems worth it to me because that tiny fucking percent that the bank
Right.
is going to give me is going to
Right.
compound the larger amount of money I put in there. But if I've only got $500 to spare from like a good month that I had or something, like, is that really the best use? And so it's like, because for me, it's always been this gap between I'm eliminating my debt, I'm cutting out useless expenses, and I'm so desperately like trying to leap this chasm, this like gap between that and being in a place where I'm learning how to grow my money. And it's like $500 doesn't seem like enough to be like, let me start a stock portfolio. It doesn't
You're right.
seem like enough to let me buy a CD. So it's like
Mm.
that person who's in this weird purgatory between like, I am doing the healthy, financially responsible things, but I'm not quite in a position to like throw 50K into a particular style of like investment, if that makes
Well,
sense.
what
Like
what does
that part has always
sophistication have?
confused me.
What does sophistication have to have happened, or how has it have changed if you went from $500 to 50,000? If you now have the ability to create $50,000 of net revenue and accumulate it, obviously you've got some financial acuity now. You figured out how to real world experience on how to create money translates into also understanding the basics of investing. If I created with my company 50 grand of net revenue that I want to invest, I then can look at companies because they're a company too. I understand what I had to do to make 50,000. That company has to do the exact same philosophies that I have to do. That's just doing it on a grander scale. So once I understand how to make money out here in my own business, it does give me a little bit of insight then as to how all these companies on the Dow, the Nasdaq, the S&P 500 and all that stuff, I now understand a portion of how they create revenue and the things that they have to do. What makes a successful business? What makes a bad business? But again, when we start talking publicly traded, there's all these other aspects into it of who are the players behind the scenes that we don't see. Are there hedge funds that make money if it goes up and or if it goes down? Are there retirement state
Mm.
teachers retirement plans? Are they investing? Who are the other investors in the space besides us little guy coming in with 50 grand? 50 grand in the scheme of things in the world of investing is zero.
Mhm.
So the
That's what
people
I
that were
mean.
the
It
people that are
feels
in the
like
market against us or in the market with us have way more sophistication than we have. That's where our team, we have to build a team of lawyer, attorney, tax accountant, CPA, whichever you use, and financial advisor that you trust. Because you're playing in a pool where you're not the big fish, you're the little fish.
Mm.
And being able to have somebody you can consult with that has a fiduciary responsibility to do what's best for you before any gain for themselves is very crucial when you're first learning the system to invest outside of those guaranteed fixed fully liquid products. And the one thing that I want to just take a quick step back is you talked about, putting some money in the bank. a good rule of thumb that I try to get when people are trying to change their life around and they're getting their debt paid off, and we still aren't quite, life is still a little shaky. I'm still driving a shitty car. I'm still renting and my contract's almost up. It's always good to have, if you can, 2 to 3 months of your expenses saved before you start doing any other investing. And by saved, that means in the boring bank, may not be making shit, but it's 100% liquid. It's literally guaranteed to always be there. So when that shitty car breaks down, you've got cash. When you have to find another place to live, you've got security deposit and first month's rent. When the washer goes out and your new house you just bought, you don't have to, again, anything that prevents you from charging and starting that accrued interest working against you again, we want to prevent. So while we're talking about banks, I just wanted to make sure that this is the part of the investing that I hate the most. Because as a seasoned investor, I just look at it like I'm wasting that money's just sitting there doing nothing. But at the same
Hmm.
time, my wife calls it her sleep at night money. She knows that if something were to happen to me, there's enough in savings that allows her the time to grieve, because she's going to have to make decisions on 7 businesses. She's going to have to make decisions on her career. She's going to
Hmm.
have to make decisions on a whole bunch of real estate. She's going to have to make all these decisions. And that sleep at night money buys her time until life insurance pays, until she can become the owner on retirement accounts, until she finds a replacement for me in the financial business if she decides to keep, you know, that sleep at night money, which I think is great. And usually it's the female in the operation or in the relationship that wants to have that. And us as men need to listen to that. We always talk about, couples having, a lot of the biggest arguments are about money. Well, if I've listened to one couple's argument, I've listened to 1,000, and it usually revolves around husband wanting to spend money and wife wanting to save money. If I could summarize like what 80% of those arguments are about, that would be it. And
Hmm.
we as men have to listen to that, because honestly and truly, especially in the times that we're in now, we haven't talked about volatility. We haven't talked about an unstable government or an unstable world. We haven't talked about what happens if something bad happens, and I have zero money in the bank. I have zero food in the pantry. I have a car that can't get me more than 2 miles down the road. My bike has a flat tire. You name it. What happens if your job's not there tomorrow? What happens if the financial situation system crashes? What happens if your significant other dies unexpectedly? We're living in a world, we've said it 100 times, where the shit that we don't think or don't plan for happening is happening every day. And it seems like since COVID's happened, it just seems like that's accelerated. Like there's way more bullshit. And if you look at most people, they're more wound tight now. They're all crazy, making crazy rash decisions and faster and faster and faster. When that happens, that's when the bad stuff happens.
I think that is, I think, a great place for us to kind of take it as we go. So let's recap. First, first thing, let's put me on the stand here. So let's say I need to correct my financial life. First thing I need to do is know exactly how much money is coming in and leaving my account every single month. I need to then tally up how much debt am I actually in,
Mm-hmm.
and I need to work to eliminate that debt. First and foremost, especially if it's on high interest credit
Highest
card. Like
interest rate
those are
first.
highest interest rate first. And
Yep.
so I know what money's coming in, I know what money's coming out. I know what my debt is, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to start attacking my debt based on the highest interest rate first. And
Mm-hmm.
once I've done that, now I'm going to be, or maybe even in parallel simultaneously, but somewhere in this same chapter, I'm going to be slowly putting money into the boring old bank account
Yep.
so that I start building up my sleep at night fund. So
Yes.
that's 3 months or so of
Start out
bill,
with one.
all my bills. Yeah, or
Start with
even a
one.
month. Sure, sure, that
Start
makes
out with a
sense.
week, dude. The next week's groceries. Start out with next week's groceries. Baby step it, man. And then next month, maybe get another week's groceries in there. Or 6 months from now, get 6 months from now, have 1 month put away. Little
That makes
baby
sense.
steps will make sure you don't make yourself even more stressed about money. than you already are today because of the situation, because you're trying to do something that your situation is not going to allow you to do at the rate of speed that you'd like to have it done. Make those little incremental changes, make progress. We talk about paying off the highest rate credit card first or the highest rate debt first. The only way that I'll veto that and say you should do it second is if there's a couple small things that you can totally, $200 here takes that right off and it's totally gone.
Mm.
If there's a couple little things that I can just get out of my hair and they're gone and I get a quick win, I'll do those first. Otherwise, if that's not the
I
case, I
see.
pay the highest interest rate first. So sorry to interrupt, but
No, no, it
again,
makes
baby
sense.
steps.
Yeah, so the baby steps. So I guess maybe what I'm saying here for the bullet points is here are the main chapters. Know your
Mhm.
money in and money out. Know your
Yep.
total debt. Start attacking the highest rate interest, the highest interest rate credit cards or loans debts first,
Mhm.
and start tucking money away for your oh shit fund. That's your
Yep.
seatbelt fund, your sleep at night fund. Now, these chapter headings that I'm saying can be broken down into smaller, more manageable goals. So if the goal is 3 months of all your bills in a savings account that you never touch, that
Mhm.
number might as well read zero in that account because that money doesn't exist unless you absolutely need it.
Yep.
Well, then we start with a week. Start by just a little bit. So that's those baby steps. But the overall chapter headers are if you want to get to a place of financial freedom, it comes at a cost.
Yes.
And some of those costs are going to be cutting out stupid shit. If you need a phone, don't get the most expensive one, as tempting as it is. And Verizon's going to give you some deal where you do this and this and this, but it locks you into money that now you owe them. It's like we have to be so careful of committing to money that doesn't even exist yet in our lives. There's so many little things that we can do to achieve financial freedom. But one that I cannot help but come back to, and it's part of your answer that you gave. If I said if you had to start over right now and
Mhm.
rebuild all the wealth that you've acquired in your life, you said you wouldn't work for somebody else.
Right.
And I think for the last like 15 minutes here, I think this goes directly into financial health because the personal financial health that we just talked about, starting a small business or aligning yourself with a small business that you believe in
Mhm.
is I really believe that is one of the most powerful medicines that we have against whatever it is that's coming. So there's all these crazy projections of dystopia, economic collapse. We're shifting into central bank digital currencies. And what about BRICS? And what's China doing? There's all these super stressful things. Are we switching to blockchain? And if the government does, is it going to be Ethereum or is it big? There's all these debates and crazy things going back and forth that stresses people out.
Right.
But it seems to me that one of the things that is still totally within the realm of our control is I can create a product or service and sell that thing and exchange it for money with people that I can make eye to eye, face to face contact with. And
Mhm.
they're just short of death and nuclear bombs. There is nothing a government entity can do to get in between me and that
Amen.
person.
Yeah,
And that seems,
what if you can trade? How much money do I
yeah,
need out of my budget to accelerate payback on my 24% credit card if my car breaks down and I go fix his sink and he changes my oil?
right.
And it's even. How much money did I need out of my budget for that? There was a time when our country was built on, you know, trading stuff back and forth, no money traded hands. I have a feeling that as time goes forward, at least for the next 5, 7 years, I think we're going to go back to that again because the taxation on every level of commerce is getting to the point where, again,
Yeah,
you know, taxes go up, the business says, okay, I'm going to just pass that on to my customer. Well, if I'm, Ford Motor Company and, my suppliers, all for carburetors and not carburetors, but electronic fuel systems, four-wheel drives, transmissions are all increasing the price, then my price of my truck goes up when I sell it. Well, at
that's right.
some point, the end user is going to be out of additional funds to pay for the additional markup. We're teetering there now, where all of a sudden, if I have a car, instead of going and buying the $90,000 pickup truck, I can just go work with a mechanic and, dude, I will resheet your roof and, put new shingles on it and I'll put new gutter system on your roof if you rebuild the motor in my car. and we won't trade any no money changes hands, and it's done.
Yeah.
This is coming
Th-
back again. And the biggest
I
thing is,
hope
we
so.
talked about investing in yourself. When you start your own, and again, when you say start a small business, it could be just you. There doesn't have to be a product, there doesn't have to be employees. It could just be you as a sole proprietor. And all you're
Mhm.
doing is, I work at a mechanic shop and I make $25 an hour. Well, instead, I'm going to work out of my garage and I'm going to charge people $100 an hour, which is pretty much the going rate for any mechanic, if you take it to the car dealership. Well, all of a sudden, I've invested in myself. After a few months, I can buy just about any tool I need to perform the exact services that are being performed at the dealership. And again,
Yeah.
this is the part of the economic cycle that works and is always moving, no matter how much government influences, no matter how much branding and marketing and lack of quality services and products or whatever. This is always, there's always the cycles. The economic cycles never stop. They move at different speeds. They may move in different industries. They may move in different countries. There's all these circles, but they always go. And if you want to start over, if you want to pick a place to go, and you can start being hyper aware of, every time I go to get my furnace serviced, I have to wait a month. Huh. I wonder if EHOVI, or a joint vocational school or a tech school, if I could go at night and I only have to do is sacrifice 2 years. I'm going to work full time. I'm going to sacrifice 2 years, and I'm going to go from making 50,000 a year to $150,000 a year on my own. But I got to sacrifice 2 years to do it. Do I have the mental fortitude? Do I have the balls? Do I have the courage? Do I have the
Mm.
support system from my spouse, my kids, my family? Do I have what it needs to sacrifice those 2 years to do the things that lifts our whole family up? The answer to that question today, unfortunately for a lot of families, is resoundingly no. It's resoundingly no.
Mm.
And until we reteach people that you truly are in control, and you and I have had some knockdown dragouts about excuses, who's in control, what can happen.
Mhm.
I'm just telling you, I don't care what the opinion you have is, if you're listening, or what Tony's opinion is. I'm just telling you this. If you want to change where you are, you have to authentically believe you control it. And it's your fault that you're where you're at, and that
That's right.
you will sacrifice and do all the work to get where you want to go. If you answer no to either three of those statements, stay the fuck where you are, because you're wasting everybody, including my time. That's just
That
the honest to God truth.
Well, that's why, I think a lot of people who aren't into like running their own small business, freelancing, or anything like that, they'll see the Gary V's, Tom Bilyeu's, Tony Robbins. They see all these business people talking about personal growth and
Right.
development, and
Yep.
they wonder, like, what is the deal with all this or something? And it's like, no, it's because running a business is extremely difficult, and
Hmm.
it is going
Yes.
to suck. It's going to test you. It's going to point at all of the things that you're not good at and require that you get at least decent enough at them to get through, until you hopefully maybe hire somebody to do them for you that is much better at it than you, and you better be able to pay them well. So this is a very long journey. So financial freedom starts to look like, if you're going to be an employee, if you're going to work for someone else,
Hmm.
then I think there's like a big reality check that a lot of people need, where it's
Right.
like there is perhaps a cap on where you're going to be able to go financially in your life, unless you can stow away enough money to make some impactful investments, the right place, right time. Maybe you ascend financially there, but at the end of the day, the money you're getting paid from that person is the money that you're getting, and that's it. So
Right.
managing that money responsibly is crucial, because that's it. That's what you have. You get X
Right.
amount of money per week, and if you get some percentage raise year over, that's great too. But at the end
Mhm.
of the day, this is what you have, and knowing what that is and how much is leaving, eliminating debt. It is really pretty simple. But if you're wanting to ascend to a place of total financial freedom, then it really is going to be exiting this world of being an employee, doing all the other same things that the employee does, knowing your money in, money out, what's
Yep.
my total debt, what's the highest credit card percent of interest I have to tackle first, where's my rainy day fund at, and do I have thick enough skin and enough tenacity to then start my own economic adventure, some economic opportunity that can grow money? And again, it's in that space that it requires us to do all these other things that I talk about on this channel, which is another reason why I love you so much, is because it requires you to have a network. If
100%.
you're a small business owner, you have to talk to other people. You have to be friends with them. This whole like, I'm an introvert thing, you might as well say I'm an employee for life.
Yes.
I
Yes,
hate to
that's
break
true.
it to you. Like it's just, you're an employee for life unless you can push yourself through to get some form of extroversion. Now, does that mean you have to be like like the Prince Charming, or the most like convincing outwardly social person, like a social butterfly? No, but it does mean that you have to make some accommodations in yourself to be somewhat extroverted in enough ways to build a network of people, which means you're building community. Your network is your community, your clients, the other businesses that you're working with. That is the lifeblood of civilization. And I really do believe that a part of why we're all so disconnected is because almost every product and service that we consume is coming from some faraway entity that we'll never know, we'll never meet. We're not a part of their decision-making process. We're just some end user, some number on a screen. Whereas the more engaged we are with our local economies, then the stronger that community is, because it
Right.
requires that face-to-face interaction, networking, and working along or across party lines. It All of the things that seem to be troubling us on a societal level, I think, stems from the fact that our communities have been destroyed. And one of the strongest engines of a community is small business. So as we wrap it up here, we got a few minutes left.
Well, I think, Tony, if I could, just to interject, is
Please.
I want to. I have a personal story that I think can give hope, and then I have an important question that I think everybody has to be honest about. So the personal story I'm going to tell is about my grandmother, my father's mother. She worked her entire life. My grandfather was an alcoholic. She worked 45, 50 years for a church as a secretary. The highest amount of hourly wage she ever made was the year she retired. She made $8 an hour. And the only reason she made $8 an hour was because that was the minimum wage that year. So when I talk about working for the neighborhood farmer as a 15, 16, 17-year-old during that time, I was making more money than my grandmother had made her entire career. Here's the interesting thing that happened is my grandma passes, of course, as all grandparents do eventually. And we started going through closets and cleaning up her house and doing that. And my sister was going through a closet and she found, I don't know if you've ever seen them, they were like a little lock box and they looked like wood, but they were steel and you just had a little key that you could open it.
Mhm.
And, people used to have that, kept their important papers in it and stuff like that. Because fires never worked in houses. So it happened to houses back in the day. So you didn't need fireproof. Well, anyways, she digs it out. I have to pick the lock and get it to open because we could obviously had no key for it. And lo and behold, in this box, it's about 18 inches wide and, probably let's just call it 11 inches deep, was full of government security bonds or safety deposit bonds stacked in and wedged in so tight you couldn't have slid another one in there if you tried. So back in the day when we were kids, my grandma would always get us government bonds. And like they would give you a $20 bond. They actually only spent $10 on it. You had to wait like 10 years and you could get your $20 type of a thing. And the whole reason she got those for us was trying to incent us to save. Well, here we did a little research. We had to take this is back in the day before lots of computers and stuff. So you couldn't go online and figure out how much your bond was worth by popping the serial number in. We had to go to the bank. Took the bank 3 weeks to figure out and look up all of her government bonds. Ended up, she had $78,790 some dollars
Wow.
worth of government bonds stacked side by side, sandwiched into a little box. Well, that's one thing. Making most of her career $4.50, $5 an hour, having my grandfather, be an alcoholic in and out, very productive guy, but still an alcoholic in and out. She paid to build their house with cash that they lived in, that my sister now lives in now. And then we find some statements and see that she also has an investment portfolio that has just a little north of $100,000 in it. So this lady lived her life with discretion over spending, never made big dollars, but controlled every penny that went out and decided what was more valuable to her. Now, in retrospect, my whole family wishes she would have spent the money on herself and did some fun things, and traveled and all that stuff. But to her, she grew up during the Depression. She grew up where if you got a bottle of something, you rinse the bottle out and you reuse the bottle for everything known to man for the next 20 years straight, or until the
Hmm.
bottle broke. So I say that to say this is that I know the excuse makers and the pity partiers will all go, well, it's different today. It's way more expensive today. Well, a typical wage today, I mean, there's kids making $18 an hour doing frickin' fries at McDonald's. My grandma worked full time as a secretary at a church and averaged probably about $5 an hour. Houses cost X, but they cost this now. I get all of that. But I'm here to tell you, when you make $5 an hour and you're the head of the economic household and you pay cash for your home and you pay cash for your cars your entire life and you never once had debt, that is ultimate discipline in determining exactly what you want out of life. And you have to look in the mirror and be honest that if somebody like that could do it, you also have hard decisions you can make. And the decisions in the life that you want to have 10 years from now, 15 years from now, will be determined by your daily financial habits that you use today. So I say that to ask this, and this is rhetorical because obviously nobody can answer, is do you think there's one decision you could make today that would totally screw up your entire financial life, your entire personal life? Is there one decision you could make, if you made it, would throw everything, knock the wheels off the car, head into the ditch, go off the cliff, whatever you want to call it? Is there a decision you could make to do that? I think we would all agree that there is something that all of us could decide that would train wreck everything. Second question, is there a decision that you could make today? One decision that has the potential with leverage to change everything about your life, your kids' life, and your community and the people you give a shit about that are around you. And if you answer honestly, the answer is yes. We all know what that decision is. So I'm going to sum up by saying this: you are fucking choosing to be where you're at today. You chose it. You picked it. You put up with it. You accept it. That's hard talk coming from somebody that just doesn't understand. But I've been exactly where most of you have been. I swear on my life, I've failed more than I've succeeded. It's just I failed early and figured out and learned from those mistakes, so I didn't fail late when it mattered.
Hmm.
So remember, when you listen to this and you push and you shut it off and you go back to work and you forget everything we just talked about for the last 4 or 5 hours or whatever it's been on 2 episodes, you are choosing not to implement. I want to thank Tony for having me on today. Brother, I appreciate this. I sure hope this gets out. And I don't care if it just helps one person today. I'm not about, anything. I don't need to be famous. You don't give a shit about any of that. We just want to help one person. And K Dizzle in the chat, you're the one. I'm in, all in, brother. I'm going to hold you accountable. Thanks again, my friend. I appreciate you very much.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a very, very busy man. And I just appreciate not only our friendship, but your candidness. And we've had some, you know, some interesting, I wouldn't call them arguments, but we definitely debate and we get
Oh yeah.
intense, like especially when we get into politics. Everyone else at the dinner table is like, didn't we come here to have fun? And we're like, we are having fun. Just hold on a second. This is fun for us,
Who the
but
fuck
we always
invited
end up,
Eric?
yeah. Who invited this fucking guy? But I love it. And I think it deepens the respect we have for one another, because I know
Yes.
none of your opinions are half cooked, and you know that
Right.
mine aren't either. And so if guys
100%.
like us are coming to those conclusions, like, I know I have to at least hear you out, because I know it's not just something you heard on a fucking YouTube video one time. It's something you've thought about. And not only that though, but I respect your net worth, and I respect the fact that you would allow somebody like me, like a broke ass, to come into the mastermind group and learn over these last few years. Because while my business still has a tremendous amount of growing that it needs to do through a lot of painful systems development, there's so many approaches I need to change: my communication, client systems, all that stuff. But I would not be here without the knowledge that I've gleaned from the mastermind group and
Amen.
yourself, which
Same.
which is which
Same.
is and I know that's why I bring it up, because it's fascinating. And this is something I want people to understand, is that Eric is the head of our mastermind group, and we meet once a month. It's basically, I call it small business therapy,
Right.
which is pretty accurate. But you also go to them with people who have a higher net worth than you
Than
do,
me. Yes.
and they probably also go to some. And
Yes.
this is what the ancients have been talking about. This is why we have reverence for ancestors. This is why we're supposed to respect elders and stuff. It goes to this greater thing of like, there are just certain things you cannot know until you know them. And they usually come with time, wisdom, failure, and all these things. And so being around people who've walked that walk and can now talk that talk effectively is incredibly important. So to anybody who's listened to both these episodes, or even just caught bits and pieces of them as you were cleaning the house or driving to work or something, I want you to know that your life changes when you start hanging around people who have changed their life.
Yep.
And it does not get any simpler than that, or easier. A lot of
Right.
what these self-help people talk about is always like, well, it's simple, but it's not easy. It's going to take a lot of work, and there are so many
Yeah.
truths to that. But the one thing that I believe is both simple and easy is just changing who you're around, changing the voices that are getting access to your ears, is a really simple step to changing your life, whether that's drugs, money, spirituality, health, and fitness. It really starts there. So that's the thing that I'm most grateful for, man, is that you're willing to share the space and the energy that you've created in
Always.
your life. And it's meant a lot to me. And I know that I will be able to do the same thing you've done for me for someone
Amen.
else one day. And
That's the dream.
that
That's the dream.
I'll make sure I keep you in my mind when I do, man. Thank you so much for being here, dude. Thanks for your time.
Later.
Really appreciate it. Toodaloo, kangaroos. Let me go ahead and end this.